kids, safety first. Always important. Do you really need instructions on how to wear eyeglasses? Come on. Always make sure you have proper lubricant. Again, proper lubricant. And brake part cleaner, that shit's always good. Always make sure you can clean shit. Now, I know some of you might know Grinder, the app. I don't know it that well, but I'm sure some of you do. But we always need an actual angle grinder. So that one's better if you ask me. There we go. These are all the tools that we didn't have last week. And fuck Halfords. Fuck this virus. Because normally I would just go to the store and pick all this shit up in a minute. Instead, I had to wait all goddamn week. Especially for this fucking thing.
Welcome back, guys. We're trying this again. As you might know, last time Murphy's Law came and kicked us right in the ass. But today, we have the fabled 36mm socket. So we're not gonna have this problem again, I hope. So let's just dive into it, and we're probably gonna skip ahead to get to where we were before. That way, and I hope you guys, welcome to our new setup. This is the garage. As you can see, we have some amazing space. We have tables to put our tools. We have a nice stool to sit on. We have carpets to make sure we don't get too filthy. But I'm really happy with the space, and it's because of the kind editor-in-chief and his girl were actually great to actually clean it out and get it ready. So we're lucky to have this, and we're lucky to have them. So I guess let's get this thing started. Remember, kids, no gloves, no love. This is where we got to last time, and we realized we did not have everything we needed. Today's not that day. If you want to get in close over here, you can see there's this washer crushed underneath, and I have to get this ridge back. So I have to kind of use maybe a flathead screwdriver as a kind of a driver / chisel and get this to lift back up, and then we can get this around. But let's just check and make sure we got the right size. Look at that, perfect. That's amazing. I'm so happy with that. Now, this is not necessarily the Triumph approved workshop manual way to do this, but I'm a resourceful person and I like to improvise to get what I need done. If I sat around all day trying to wait for the right tools, the right way to do things, well, nothing would get done. So the purpose of this washer here is to make sure that the nut doesn't loosen over time and end up unscrewing, because then the whole sprocket can come out and, well, really, really bad things are gonna happen. So let's find a way to get this to stop moving. We can either put it in first gear, but I don't want to use the engine as a chock. What we're going to do is lock the wheel with the swing arm by using a bar and a claw so I don't scratch anything. I'm just gonna feed that through over here, and I'm gonna get it until I can reach the other swing arm. And then you basically create a wheel chock, and that isn't going to move anywhere. And you're also hopefully not going to scratch anything up, right? So now we can get our brand new shiny 36mm socket, which fits nice on that. Oh, it comes right off. Then you got your nice little crush washer here, which I don't know how we're gonna get that off. Now let's make sure that we put this back on the right side. This was facing out, that was facing in. We gotta make sure we do that. Let's get this washer out of here. There we go. All right, now we can see these are the splines. So one of the cool things that we have to do is make sure that it matches with our new sprocket. And it looks like it does. There we go. Look at that. That took us less than, I don't know, 5-10 minutes to get to this point, all because of one stupid thing. Now, one of the differences that is apparent, this one obviously has a cover, plasticky cover on this, but I don't know if this comes off and we can put it on a new one or if we're just gonna have to live without it. We'll find out. Now, as you can see, if you can, there's some shark finning going on. You can see that between here and there isn't a nice perfect arc like you can see this one. And if you compare them next to each other, that's the reason we're changing these, because this one is definitely worn. Who knows if anyone wheelied it or who knows what happened, but it's definitely not very pretty. So I'm happy we're doing this. I'm happy we're doing this now. This is one of the fun parts about getting a new bike, is you get to see some of its history and go from it with that. So yeah, you can see it well on there, can't you? There we go. So you see that that's spinning nice and freely. Then we can put the new one on and make sure it fits. Well, let's clean this up a little bit. Okay, this is just to make sure it fits. It seems like it's okay. The tolerances are nice and tight. I always want to get this back off because I actually want to clean up the area, so I don't want to put it all the way on there. But it looks like we're good. We are very good. Now we just have to make sure we clean all of this up, and then we are golden, because if you can see, oh wow, that's disgusting. Look at that. See, what happens is you get your chain, you clean it up nicely, you lube it up, and then if you don't clean under the sprocket cover, the chain is just gonna get filthy again very, very quickly. So as a result of that, we're gonna have to clean all of this out, and we're gonna have to find a nice way to do that. That's one of the reasons I bought brake part cleaner. Now you have to be careful with that because it's not very nice to rubber pieces and other, it's a lot kinder to metal. So what we're gonna do is spray it on the cloth, and then we're gonna try and get in there and clean it out. But again, you have to be very careful with it. Okay, well, that's about as clean as we're going to get it. I think the next step in the process is let's get the new sprocket on. Let's kind of get that a little bit sealed up, and then let's try to get the new chain on this. So what we're doing now is we're actually gonna change the adjustment to bring this a little bit closer so we have a little bit more slack in the chain. That way we can get it over the sprocket, the new sprocket, a little bit easier. Now I just need to break that. So this one, I'm gonna put it with the information facing outwards, that way it can always be seen. So we're actually gonna coat this with a little bit of grease, because grease acts, this specific one, high performance bearing grease, acts also as a little bit as a corrosive inhibitor, and will help us get the sprocket on and off during future servicings. So you just kind of want to get a little bit on there, not too much at all really. More on the splines, not so much the thread. All right, just a nice little thing. Same thing on the sprocket. Just so hopefully it goes in a little bit easier. See, look at that. It goes right on. because a little bit of assembly grease, which is nice, but then you also want to make sure you don't have anything on the outside one because you don't want the new nut to slip. And we can go ahead and clean these up a little bit. Take a little bit of brake cleaner. Get some of that rust off. Rust is like a cancer. Once there is a little bit, it won't stop unless all of it is taken off. And that's kind of one of the problems with these things because you can't always do that. Luckily, this isn't necessarily a structural component. It is also easy to replace. So if it does, corrode all the way through to the point that its structural integrity is compromised, then you can always feel free and change it. So that looks nice and clean. Let's find that crush washer. This one, let's clean this one up a little bit too. Okay, now we got these a little bit cleaned up. I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of coat them in this anti-corrosive spray. I don't know if it'll actually make a difference, but it's not gonna hurt it. Hopefully I can keep these doing all right. Just a nice little layer of that before we install them. Hopefully we can keep some of the rust at bay. And yeah, also I don't want to lubricate the threads, so we're gonna clean that out from the inside. And then there we go. In theory, it should be good. What I'm gonna do is give this a few taps to make sure it's seated 100% against the motorcycle. There we go. Because as you can see, the washer is also splined to match right in there. There we go. So now we can give this one more little rub. Get that ready for this. Now, if you remember, that side goes on the inside. So we're gonna put it back exactly the same way. Now let's get the part of the washer. This part, we got to put it back down after we torque this. So we have to find out what the actual torque specs of this bolt is, this nut, and then we got to make sure we get that all nice and torqued up before we put the crush washer back. But we also want to make sure that these are kind of aligned. What we're going to try and do now is we're going to try and break the chain. So we got a special tool here, motorcycle chain breaker. I think this was around 20 or 30 pounds. I'll find out. Put a link down below for you guys maybe. And this is full of all the tools you'll need to actually do the job. So you have a whole bunch of different anvils here. You have different tools. This is your actual breaker, and then you can actually turn it whichever way you want. So what we have to do is after you locate, you spin around a little bit, you locate your master link. That's the only one link that is different than all the rest. This one specifically, if you look closely, you can see that is mushroomed over as opposed to all the other ones are much more secure. So you're gonna have to push these through. So luckily, we have the tools for this. So you're gonna wanna get this down to the side, and you basically wanna get that one over it. So let's set this up properly with all the necessary braking tools. Looks like Murphy's Law is coming back to bite us in the ass. The motorcycle chain breaker we bought, this purpose-built one, of course, is a cheap piece of crap. When all else fails, just grab the biggest damn tool you got and make some sparks. My trusty hammer, best tool on the show. I don't know if you guys agree with me. All right, so there's your axle, which is pretty cool. I'm very happy that came off very nicely. Now the back tire is coming off, and now you got to get the rear caliper because that's where it attaches is straight to the axle itself, and you want to make sure you support it by putting it someplace out of the way and that there's no pressure on the brake line. And there you go. There's our wheel. Look at that. Crazy. We're getting somewhere. Now we want to get that flat. And then we can start getting the sprocket off. All right. So this is part of the alignment tool, goes on the other side. Just for sake, let's keep it there. And then let's focus on this bad boy. That was cool. So this is part of the push drive. I really have to be careful with that. This is something we'll inspect in a second. What it does is it helps to mute the power coming from the chain and sprocket to the rear tires. So if you have any jerks, this helps to absorb it. That's why it's full of rubber. And we have to check and make sure. Actually, let's do it now. Let's pull it out and make sure there's not any cracks, because this is a wear item that we're gonna have to replace if there's anything wrong with it. And honestly, it feels okay. It's not rock hard. There aren't any cracking in it. It's not really rotting at all. So I think we're okay. But if you need to, that's how you change it. Now let's put this back on so we can get the torque we need to take these bolts off. Oh, that's interesting. That one's cracked. You see that? Wow. That's sketchy. God, this is a crusty bike. So let's get those off. Jesus. Now, because these are, what would I say, kind of cosmetic pieces, a trick you can use is you take any kind of bag you want, you put it over when you put the socket over. In this case, we can try using this. That's too big, and we don't have anything smaller, so we're gonna have to pass, I think, a 14 or 15 from there. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's, is that it? Let me see the other one. Thank you. Oh my God, this one just came off with my hand. That's the one that's cracked. This is why we do these things, so we get to know our pride and joys, and we get to know how to fix them and what's wrong with them, and we also make sure that we live to fight another day, because that's what this is all about, right? I mean, you got cracked nuts up in here. Wow, that is really bad. So we're definitely gonna have to replace that for today, so we can get home. I think, of course, we're gonna put it right back on, which is unfortunate, but that's what we're gonna have to do because I want to sleep in my bed tonight. Well, I don't mind sharing one with the editor-in-chief, but I'm not sure his lady would be very kind about that. All right, look at that. Wow, that is light. That is one of the things people like about these Renthal sprockets, is they are made out of a certain type of alloy, and they're very light. So your rotational mass is severely limited and allows you to basically translate more power to the rear wheel. Saying that, they wear very quickly. You can see these are becoming very thin. It's kind of creating this shark-like kind of fin work. And that's just one of the things that happens. These are wear items. They are going to get destroyed. And you can see the back of that is super filthy, which makes me kind of happy we're cleaning all this up. So what we're gonna do is probably take all this off, give it a good clean before we reassemble it and put it all back together. So now we got a new sprocket. Now we got to this point, we know we're gonna use it. We know it's the same size. We can take it out of the packaging without too much worry that we're gonna have to return it, which is good. And it's obvious that this is considerably heavier. That's because this one is made out of steel and not a kind of alloy. And I like it much better because it's black. And all good things are either black, white. Well, I mean, any color for this bike is pretty good, but I think a black sprocket with a gold chain, which is the new one I have over there, oh, it's gonna be really nice. Look at this. I think that's pretty. I don't know about you, but oh well. And so that's exactly the same amount of sprockets. And you can see the top, I actually have some space at the top of it right there. And these ones are running out. That's one of the reasons that we have to change these. And the weight difference is massive. I do have to say this one is much lighter, but oh well, this is life. So there we go. We can kind of chuck this now, get that out of the way. So we can't mount the new one yet because we want to clean all this up a little bit. We want to make sure that that's primo. What I'm going to do is take a look and make sure what is rubber on here and what isn't. So obviously that's where the axle sits. There's actually a spacer in there. So we're gonna clean up kind of the inside of that as well. So why don't we take this and do that. Well, Murphy's Law came back again, kicked us in the ass. That's gonna be a common reoccurrence on this program. But our chain breaker, this part, which threads into this bolt, which I can't screw now because I got it perfect, but it's too small. And so this part, which is supposed to push down, this thing is kind of like an anvil. It's too small, so it just pushes this out as you apply pressure. So I put in, this is part of a rubber glove to kind of latch onto the thread and help it bind. So I hope it works. Continuing on, let's get the new sprocket onto the rear tire. And we kind of went around and we cleaned everything, which is really nice. And so we got to get the cush drive back in there, which is this segment here. You want to make sure everything's got a nice coat of this stuff, because not only does it help metal on metal contact, it also helps anti-corrosion. And a lot of things on this bike are kind of starting to corrode. So inside of this is going to get covered by the giant axle, but I still want to make sure the rest of this is okay. I'm actually going to coat just the outside of this is one of the wheel bearings. And this one, actually spinning it, you can kind of feel it's a little rough. But when I was going back and forth on the bike, there wasn't that much play, so it's okay. Same thing on this side. So if you know any better than I do, please let me know if I'm doing this wrong or if there isn't supposed to be any grease in here, because oh well, now there is. And if you are a professional, I do want to hear from you, because I'm always trying to do better and be better. So yeah, so all these parts I'm pretty sure you want to grease up. Again, the anti-corrosive is also part of the nature of greasing things. You want to make sure that these pieces, most of these are aluminum and they corrode pretty easily. If they get a little dent in the bare metal, that's pretty much not game over, but it is what it is. So here's our new sprocket, brand new. I like it because it's black and it matches with the rest of the bike. That's kind of how the original one was. This might be a little bit nicer. I'm gonna put it with the logo and information on facing outwards. This is what would face inwards. Also, the side looks better. So there we go. Now, one thing we're gonna wanna do is get some Loctite. Now, because there's a lot of vibration in this specific area, you wanna make sure that the nuts don't go anywhere. So you put a dabble of that, just a little bit. That might even be too much. Let's actually get some of that off. And then you can install the nuts finger tight just to start with. We can get some of that off on the other one. So same thing as we took it off, we're going to tighten it in a crisscross pattern. Now, this one is the problem with the crack. I don't know what to do, because if I don't put it back on, it will throw the rear tire out of balance. And so I'm just gonna have to reuse it and replace it as soon as possible. I'm probably gonna replace all of these though, because inside they are helicoiled or heliocoiled, I don't remember. If you see, the nut is actually gold and inside there is silver, which is part of a add-on. You can even see it here, it's raised. That's not supposed to be like that. It's definitely an add-on for some reason. Obviously these nuts were probably supplied with the old sprocket and they were probably the wrong size. So whoever installed these came up with the idea of using a helicoil. This one needs a little bit of work, so we're gonna put that on in a second. Whatever. But how good does that gold and black look, if you ask me? So, as I said, this one needs some work. All right, so now we're gonna find out the right torque specs. So as you may know how to use a torque wrench, you wanna tighten this up to 55 Newton meters. So you can see right here, those are the readings, and you wanna get it up to where 55 would be about. So right there's a 56 reading, so we're gonna put the 0 right on that there. That way we'll get it at 55, 56. It's okay if you're off 1. Okay, so we got this back more or less. We got that spacer in where it's supposed to be, and we're gonna get the rest of this in. Now, before we do that, you wanna grease everything. You wanna clean everything up nicely. This one has already been cleaned. It's a lot better than it was, I do have to say. And you wanna make sure that this is nice and greased up. And the reason for that is that it just makes the installation easier. It helps to protect it against corrosion. And it overall more or less is on the bearings. So a nice thin layer of that will really help the long-term life of these components. And then same thing on the bike, you wanna get those as well. This assembly is part of your adjustment, and you also wanna grease, and you wanna clean that out, and you wanna grease that as well. So you can pull it off the spacer. You can see there, that's pitted, that's corrosion. So you can kind of fill that in. It's not gonna help it, but it will slow it down hopefully, and hopefully prevent it from spreading too much. So because this item, it's metal on metal, you wanna kind of make sure it's safe, effectively. So same thing here, you wanna get some in there, all over, and even on the back side. This is what I'm doing. You can do with it what you like. It's not in the manual or anything. You wanna make sure that you get both sides of that. This is, you know, basically bare metal. God damn it. So there you go. Then you got your adjuster. Goes in nicely there. This one goes on the other side. I've already greased that one. And then now, you can fit your rear tire. That's so smooth. And now we got to work on getting the new chain on. Let's get this puppy bad boy out of the box, huh? Finally. This has only taken us about, 7 hours. Plus or minus. All right. Now, I love the way they package these things. It makes it feel like such a special, oh, yeah, look at that. It's like when you go to the fish market and you get this superb piece of meat. Look at that puppy bad boy. Yeah, look at that. Look at that combination with the black and gold. That's what we're looking for over here. So in this, you get a new master link, you get some seals, and you get some manufacturer lubricant that you're supposed to put on inside of here. Because normally inside these is already manufacturer-based lubricant, except for the master link. All right, so what we're going to do is pull the old chain back from here. That way, oh shit. That way we can use it as a guide for the new chain. And we don't have to feed it through, kind of like what we're doing now. The only problem is the old chain, I don't really want touching my nice shiny new sprocket. But oh well. Stop that. All right, so what you do is you take part of the old chain, take the new chain, and then you can connect it like that, and then you can feed it through. Okay, so that's what you get in your set. You got your master link, you got your seals, and you got some assembly lubricants. So you want to assemble that basically exactly the same as every other link, but you want to make sure that you pack it full of grease. So let's get the seals open. Just want to make sure all that lube gets all nice and in there. Make sure it kind of rolls around a bit.